Picture a dawn in Barnaul, the kind of Siberian dawn that paints the horizon pastel pink before the sun even dares to rise above the steppe. The air is knife-edged. It splinters breath into tiny clouds that hover and vanish, hover and vanish. On a scruffy side street behind a Khrushchyovka apartment block, a lanky kid in scuffed felt boots is swatting a taped-up tennis ball with what can only generously be called a hockey stick. Really, the amputated branch of a birch tree shaved flat by a pocketknife. Neighbors have seen the routine so often they time their commutes by the rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack. They shake their heads, half amused, half awed, because the boy never looks cold, never looks tired, never leaves the ice-slicked pavement until the low winter sun has slipped back behind the apartment roofs. That boy is Alexei Cherepanov, and before long, the entire hockey world will learn his name. Even at 8 years old, he skates the way other children breathe, automatically, effortlessly. When a coach in Barnaul's youth program runs the standard stop and start drill, the others dig in hard with their inside edges and spray snow. Alexei glides the same pattern, but barely disturbs the ice, as though he's solving an entirely different equation of momentum. Parents trading gossip over the rink boards whisper that he has an extra gear, a phrase that will trail him the rest of his life. They mean it literally. He seems to possess a hidden overdrive that kicks in whenever the puck dares to drift out of his orbit. They also mean it figuratively, because his mind works one click faster than everyone else's. He's not merely playing the game, he's forecasting futures. By 12, he's turned every neighborhood alley into a makeshift training ground. One week, he chalks a target the size of a matchbox on an old metal door. By Friday, it rattles so many times the paint flakes off. Another week, he marks 5 paces, 10 paces, 15, drilling snapshots from each line until the sound of the ball hitting rusted steel echoes like metronomic gunfire. Classmates talk about PlayStation. Alexei talks about release angles. When teachers confiscate the hockey magazines he hides inside math books, he shrugs and rewrites every lost article from memory, hand-copying the stats and diagrams with surgical precision. Hockey isn't a hobby, and it isn't quite an obsession either. It is the mechanism through which he understands the universe. Barnaul, though, is not a launch pad for stardom. It's a factory city closer to Mongolia than Moscow, better known for relentless winters and a tank manufacturing plant than for producing elite athletes. To chase real competition, Alexei must leave home, so at 15 he boards a rickety overnight train to Omsk, 13 hours in a drafty second-class car, clutching a duffel bag stuffed with one good suit, 3 pairs of socks, an old pair of skates an inch too small, and a note from his mother telling him to eat properly. He stares out the window at the snow-blasted taiga, rehearsing over and over how he'll introduce himself to Avangard Omsk's junior team coaches. When the train screeches into the station at dawn, he steps onto the platform and into the first chapter of a story the hockey world will later call a comet. Omsk's coaches are skeptical. They already roster kids from Moscow, Yaroslavl, and Chelyabinsk, traditional pipelines with pedigrees. But the Barnaul boys' tryout scrimmage is impossible to ignore. He weaves between defenders as if guided by invisible threads, snapping wrist shots so quick goalies only hear the crossbar zing. During one rush, he dissects the blue line gap like a physicist splitting atoms, threading a pass under a defenseman's stick just as the blade lifts an inch off the ice. No one taught him that timing. It's pure instinct. The head coach signs him on the spot. The Continental Hockey League doesn't yet exist. Russia's top circuit is still the Super League, but 17-year-old Cherepanov makes the senior avant-garde roster anyway. Russian journalists love metaphors, and they dub him the Siberian Express, evoking both his blinding north-south speed and the legendary Trans-Siberian Railway. The nickname sticks because he seems to run on rails, needing only the faintest seam to rocket clean through. In his rookie season, he scores at will, slicing through defenses stacked with grizzled veterans. One night against Khimik Moscow Oblast, he dents the scoreboard 3 times in 18 minutes, shattering Pavel Bur's venerable rookie record and sending every talent scout in the arena scrambling for a pen. Scouts talk in code. They say good wheels when they mean speed, soft hands when they mean artistry, hockey IQ when they mean clairvoyance. Cherepanov grades out elite in all 3 categories. North American franchise representatives file 2-page reports that read like poetry. His release is so deceptive it should be censored. He sees lanes that don't exist until he wills them into being. Some reports claim he's a top 3 pick on talent alone, possibly the crown jewel of the 2007 draft class. But the dreaded Russian factor clouds those forecasts. Will he bolt for the NHL, or will he sign a juicy KHL extension and vanish behind the geopolitical curtain? It's a question that makes general managers chew their pens to splinters. Draft night in Columbus feels like a taut thriller. The first few picks unfold as predicted until slide rules and salary cap charts collide with nationalism and rumor. One by one, teams blink. At 15th, 16th overall, tension thickens. Television cameras cut repeatedly to the nervous Russian phenom, twisting a plastic water bottle in his hands. Finally, at number 17, the storied New York Rangers step to the microphone and call his name. Journalists describe a collective gasp, a mix of surprise, relief, triumph, foreboding. Some analysts call it the steal of the decade. Others warn Madison Square Garden might never actually see the kid. But Rangers executives grin behind closed doors because they've watched the same game footage everyone else has, and they're certain talent like this can't be fenced in by geography forever. Back in Russia, the avant-garde ultras unfurled giant banners. Nash Express, Nasha Budushe, Our Express, Our Future. Cherepanov returns to Omsk with new swagger, determined to armor plate every weakness before tackling North America. He's already lethal on the rush, but he starts shadowing veteran power forward Alexander Svitov to learn how to body shield the puck along the boards. He lingers after practice with assistant coaches perfecting a one-timer from the left circle. Teammates rib him about living at the rink, but the truth is, he's building a jump kit for crossing oceans. And then, destiny deals an intoxicating card. Jaromir Jagr, the Czech savant of wrist curls and mulleted myth, signs a shock contract with avant-garde Omsk. The locker room dynamic shifts overnight. Jagr rolls in with 2 suitcases of personal branded protein powder and a dossier of off-ice workouts that would make an Olympic gymnast wince. Young Omsk players freeze, equal parts starstruck and terrified. But Cherepanov sees a once-in-a-lifetime mentor. He parks himself next to Jagr on the bench, peppering the legend with questions about stride length, offhand face-offs, shoulder fakes. Veterans expect the rookie to fade into the shadow of greatness, yet something alchemical happens. Their styles mesh. At even strength, Jagr bullies defenders along the boards, pins the puck to his stick with that signature hip swivel, and threads passes to the kid cutting through soft seams. Cherepanov answers by reading Jagr's intention a full beat early, ghosting to open ice where the puck arrives like destiny. Coaches don't overthink it, they pair them permanently. Analysts salivate at the highlight reels. Away from the rink, they bond over old-school NHL VHS tapes. Jagr's Penguins days, Bure's breakaways, Fedorov in full flight. They laugh about how North American commentators butcher Slavic surnames. Jagr shows Cherepanov the infamous 45-pound wrist curl routine. The kid grimaces through the first set, but comes back daily, knuckles raw, proud bruises coloring his forearms. The elder Czech senses the spark of generational talent and predicts publicly that his line mate will one day rule the NHL. Rangers message boards explode. Images of the pair in matching New York jerseys circulate like gospel. Monday, October 13th, 2008, starts unremarkably. Avantgarde is playing Vityaz Chekhov in a routine KHL regular season tilt. Earlier that afternoon, Cherepanov goofs around shooting mini pucks at the equipment manager's coffee mug, laughing when he finally clips the rim and spills lukewarm brew everywhere. In warm-ups, he flutters his wrist shot into the upper netting, greeting fans behind the glass with a shy nod. The puck drops, the game whirs to life, and on his third shift of the third period, he executes a trademark give-and-go with Jagr, peels off in a looping exit, and returns to the bench to catch his breath. Video replays later show him standing, head bowed, one glove pressed to his chest as though steadying a wild heartbeat. He sits, slumps, collapses. Sudden. Absolute. For a beat, nobody registers the catastrophe. Hockey benches are chaotic places, skates banging, coaches barking, water bottles clattering. Then jogger bellows for a trainer. Panic ripples through the arena. Fans lean forward, confusion turning to dread. Whispers begin. Where's the ambulance? Does the defibrillator work? Some claim the ambulance left early, summoned away by an unrelated emergency. Others insist the arena's defibrillator is locked in a closet with a dead battery. Seconds bleed into minutes, minutes that feel like hours, before paramedics finally reach the fallen star. They try chest compressions, oxygen, adrenaline. 17 minutes drag past. In the hallway, someone wails. By the time Cherepanov reaches the hospital, he is clinically gone. Doctors list the cause as sudden heart failure, myocarditis, or an undetected congenital condition, depending on which expert is speaking. Rumors swirl: doping residue, incompetent medical screening, a murky cocktail of both. Russian authorities launch investigations that will stretch months. Television pundits fill airtime with grim speculation. But the stark headline freezes time. Hockey prodigy Alexei Cherepanov, dead at 19. Shockwaves pulse outward. In Omsk, grief ceremonies clog the city square. Candles flicker against winter wind as fans lay flowers beneath a massive portrait of their Express. Across the ocean, Ranger diehards refresh news feeds in disbelief, mourning a kid they'd never seen skate in the Garden, but had already laced into fantasy line combinations alongside Chris Drury and Scott Gomez. Jaromir Jagr, tears carving silent paths down his cheeks, tells reporters that nothing in his 20-year career prepared him for watching a teammate's life evaporate in front of his eyes. The NHL community, still raw from past tragedies like Masterton and Karpovtsev, unites in sorrow. Questions inevitably turn to blame. Why wasn't an ambulance stationed rinkside for the full game? Why was a medical device allowed to fail inspection? Was Cherepanov's preseason physical cursory at best? Could advanced cardiac screening have detected the defect? Under mounting public fury, KHL officials overhaul their entire medical emergency protocol. Mandatory ambulance presence and functional defibrillators become non-negotiable league policy. Training staffs receive expanded authority to halt games at the first sign of danger. International federations take note. Even the NHL re-examines its own standards, eventually drafting a rule colloquially known as the Cherepanov provision, a compensatory draft pick to any team whose first-round selection dies before signing an entry-level contract. It is bureaucratic, yes, but also a stark memorial encoded into the sport's rulebook. Meanwhile, the reverberations touch individuals in quieter, more private ways. Avantgarde's locker room hangs his jersey in a permanent stall, skates laced just so, stick-taped and waiting. Youth teams across Siberia stencil the number 7 onto practice jerseys as homage. Children recreate his signature half-stride, drag move on outdoor ponds, yelling, "See here, Panov," when the puck clangs off crossbars. In New York, a modest tribute banner appears in the Madison Square Garden rafters, white letters on Ranger blue, a promise of what might have been. Fans who attended that year's draft remember the shy grin he flashed when shaking Glenn Sather's hand. They recall how he seemed both surprised and utterly certain he belonged. Sports writers file think pieces about fragility, how the greatest physical specimens can house hidden vulnerabilities. ESPN pairs his story beside Len Bias, Hank Gathers, Reggie Lewis, turning the narrative into a cautionary tale about cardiac screening. But for many, Cherepanov remains less a cautionary tale than a symbol of unreachable potential, a comet that burned white-hot at perigee and then simply ceased to be. Every time a 19-year-old NHL rookie scores a dazzling goal, someone tweets a grainy clip of the Siberian Express racing end-to-end, captioned, "Remember what we lost." The hashtag #WhatIfCherepanov spikes annually on October 13th, a digital vigil. Jaromir Jagr, ever the stoic warrior, admits years later that the image of Cherepanov collapsing still haunts his dreams. He channels the grief into mentorship, telling rookies on every subsequent team the same line. Play like every shift could be your last, because someday one of us is right. He retires from elite leagues only to re-sign with his boyhood club in Kladno, wearing number 68, but carrying number 7 in his heart. Before games, he sometimes tapes AC beneath the knob of his stick. No cameras catch the gesture, but teammates notice. Why, people ask, does this particular loss linger so potently? Part of it is the contrasts. Brutal Siberian winters breeding incandescent speed. The innocence of 19 juxtaposed with the world-weary professionals around him. The promise of Madison Square Garden's roar extinguished in a half-lit Russian corridor. Part of it is timing, a moment when Russian hockey sought to prove parity with the NHL, only to reveal infrastructural fragility at the worst possible time. Mostly, though, it is the universality of foiled potential. We project our own daydreams onto prodigies because they represent roads untraveled, ceilings unreached. When a prodigy falls, we mourn not only the athlete, but also the future self we imagined alongside him. A decade and a half later, the legend evolves. Younger fans, too young to have watched him live, encounter YouTube compilations. Grainy KHL feeds remastered in 1080p. Icy breath swirling under arena spotlights as Cherepanov bolts up the right wing, toes the blue line, rifles a wrist shot that clanks far post, bar down. They post flame emojis, compare him to today's speed demons, and type comments like, "Bro was skating in 2008 like it was 2024. The highlight packages accumulate millions of views, algorithmically resurrecting his artistry for every new generation of hockey devotee.